As more and more studies emerge demonstrating the corrosive effect of psychopathy on government, finance, and business, researchers have begun to explore how our society itself has been molded in the psychopath's image. Now, one of those researchers, Stefan Verstappen, shares his insights on psychopathy in modern culture. This is the GRTV Feature interview on Global Research TV. You mentioned the idea of the culture itself being psychopathic and corporations being psychopathic. The environment that we're being steeped in is psychopathic in a sense that helps to foster and to create more psychopaths in its wake. Let's talk about that concept. And in such a system, it would of course only be natural that the psychopaths tend to rise to the top. So what does that really mean for the society that we're living in and the times that we find ourselves in, with the kind of rampant fraud that's taking place on Wall Street and all of the economic and political things that we see taking shape from this? How does that created or fostered by this culture of psychopathy?
Well, that it took me a few years to figure that out, and I put that in the video too. The video, I simply read from the book, but then I added images that were sort of unexpected. And so when I'm talking about the psychopaths, I would flash images of politicians and political leaders and business leaders. I think what happened is, mankind, now that I've done a lot more research on it, and you can see the effects, and it's logical. Everyone will come to the same conclusion. It's very simple. If I make an analogy, you're playing a game of chess with someone, and you're playing by the rules. But every time you move a chess piece, you now have to turn your back on the chessboard, and your opponent can rearrange all the chess pieces. Now you turn around and you continue playing. Well, you're never going to win a game of chess that way. The cheater is always going to win. So you extrapolate on that principle, and then you realize, well, in every competition in life, the cheaters are going to have an advantage. The people that act immorally, the ones that have no regard for truth, have no regard for their own character or honesty, or an honest day's work, they're definitely going to have the advantage against the guy that's always playing by the rules. So what would the natural outcome of that be? Well, the natural outcome would be that people in power will tend to be the ones that are the most sociopathic, the ones that are most ruthless, and the ones that have no conscience. And again, when I refer back to the study of history, the great leaders and all the emperors and the shoguns and the kings and queens, they tend to have been the worst of the bunch. When there's a dynastic family and there's four brothers fighting for succession to the throne, it's always the evilest brother of the bunch that tends to become king. So if I apply that to other areas of life, then you can see that the psychopaths would tend to permeate and rise to the top of any type of position where they are able to wield power. And the last thing I found out about psychopaths, and is one of the clues to really tell who they are, is that they all have one thing in common, and that is they all want to tell you how to live your life. They want to tell you what to do. It's somehow their business what you do with your life. Now, for me, I think so long as you're not hurting anyone and not hurting any animals, you're basically allowed to do what you want. If you want to drink and smoke and have sex with people and things like that, it's none of my business. What you do, where you go, who you socialize with. But psychopaths seem to have this innate desire to always manipulate you in order to do what they want you to do or what they think you should be doing. So any position of power, of course, in a position of power, what is power? The ability to tell people what to do and how to live their lives. So for any position of power, the psychopaths are going to be naturally attracted to that, because that's what gets them off. They just want to tell everybody where to get off. So if you have this attraction for psychopaths towards that position of power, then they will definitely overwhelm anyone that has a conscience, that plays by the rules, that has good intentions. So now you're going to have people with very dark interior lives that are controlling channels of communication, controlling finance, controlling different industries. And of course, what they're going to do is promote what I call their psychopathic family values. America was always big on their family values slogans back in the 90s and 80s. Yeah, their values are basically psychopathic, and I think their influences now permeated all facets of culture. I see it all the time. You're familiar with the term gaslighting, where a group of people conspire together to make you think that you're the crazy one. Well, I go crazy all the time because I can't watch a TV show, I can't watch a movie, I can't read a newspaper article without noticing that they're promoting a psychopathic agenda. People, for example, the Survivor series or the Big Brother series, and those reality shows. I think I've watched about 5 minutes of either one once. But what is the basic premise of the whole program? The premise of the program is that a group of people interact and they all try to manipulate the other group of people through lies and intimidation and deception. And then the winner is the one who's the biggest jerk, the one that's able to manipulate and deceive the others the most. That now they're the winners. So now people watching this program go, wow, he's a great winner because he's the biggest liar of the bunch. All the honest people are voted off first or kicked out first or lose first until the final result is the biggest jerk wins. And I find that in just about every television program. They're always promoting these selfish, self-centered, type of philosophy. And at first it started off as, it was cute. Oh, yeah, we're all very self-centered and we're selfish. And isn't that kind of funny that we can admit to it? And I kind of got suckered into that, too, when it started happening back in the early 80s. I thought, well, okay, yeah, that's cute. People tend to be a little bit deceptive, and we all tell little white lies. And, of course, we do. But there's a big degree between telling white lies and being a full-blown psychopath and manipulating everybody to your own advantage. So I think the final result is that our culture is predominantly psychopathic. I find I'm an artist, for example, and I find contemporary art to be absolutely hideous. I see no value in it whatsoever. It seems to promote just ugliness and lack of harmony and lack of balance. I'm a musician. I like to play music, but I find modern music to be inhuman. With all the auto tuning and the repetitious sound clips played back to back. And I've come now to the conclusion that I don't know what human beings are anymore. And what I mean to say is, I still stay positive. My wife and I, we love people, and we love meeting people, and we love doing things for people. We're activists, and we always contribute to the local charities and events. So, I'm not down on humankind, but what I think has happened is that human beings aren't what they are. Their potential is. And if I make another analogy, I would take the case of a dog. If you were to get a puppy dog and you beat it and you keep it in a cage and you're constantly conflicting it with conflicting orders, you love it, you don't love it, you smack it, you hate it. Eventually, that dog is going to grow up to be neurotic and vicious. And I think humanity is exactly like the beaten dog. We have been beaten for, I guess, about 4,000 years now, because now we have our culture, but before that we had the divine right of kings, and of course every king tended to be a psychopath. And then before that we had the religious institutions, and they weren't promoting anything healthy. So if you add it all up, we've had 4,000 years of the human population being enslaved, being manipulated, being extorted, being driven crazy with conflicting philosophies and theories. And I think the human species as a whole is like a beaten dog. It's vicious. They're confused. They're neurotic, and so that's the state of affairs.
It is a bleak picture, but I think a fair assessment of where we've arrived at as a society. And the question is defense against the psychopath. In the case of, on the personal level, when you have someone in your personal life who's exhibiting psychopathic tendencies, I think you lay out, for example, in the video, it's important to be able to identify that it is psychopathy, and in that case, that it is not something that can be reformed. It's not something that you can reach out and find the inner conscience of the person, because it simply doesn't exist. So in that case, the best thing that you can possibly do is to completely detach yourself from that person and get them out of your life if possible. But when it comes to societal psychopathy and the fact that these people are in positions of power and in governmental structures and in the tops of large corporations, what does that bode for society itself? Is there a way for society to defend itself against this takeover by the psychopaths?
Yeah, well, that's a good point that you mentioned, and in your email, that was a very good point that you raised as well. Or, I'm sorry, in the video that you did, which is, well, can we just sort of isolate the psychopaths in society and cut them off? And the book was written for individuals, Jeff, and on an individual level, you do have to have a cold exterior to them because they always try to manipulate you by playing on your sense of fairness and on your sympathy. And those of us that feel and have a conscience, there's a part of me that feels sorry for psychopaths too. They don't enjoy the fullness of life that I do. I understand that, and they probably can't help being a psychopath. There was something innate in them when they were either born, and then either genetically, or there was a gene that was triggered later on through abuse. But however they came to that state, they are probably not responsible. It's like, I don't think they ever had a choice. So I feel badly for them, but they're like a cancer cell, it's part of your body, and you might have sympathy for the cancer, but you have to cut it out anyways. So in personal relationships, I recommend isolating yourself, cutting them off, because psychopaths consider you food. And once you stop being food, they will tend to be like a leech. They'll just drop off on their own once you cut them off from the food supply. And psychopaths have a very similar life cycle to parasites. A lot of similarities there. I'm working on another video that would link and show how the parasitic strategy of survival is the one that tends to be adopted by psychopaths. But socially, that's a different question. And a lot of people said, well, we can't do this. We can't. What we should do is we should have a test and test all politicians to see whether they're psychopaths. And then if they are, imprison them. Or a lot of people advocate shooting them and other forms of violence. And I think this would be an absolute disaster. I do not think any sort of test or screening process would either work or be necessary. Well, it wouldn't work. Any kind of screening process, some sort of test that you come up with to prove whether or not somebody's a psychopath, would quickly be subverted by the psychopaths in power right now. They've subverted every law we've established in every democratic system or Republican system or system of government. Rules and procedures and morality and codes of conduct. They've subverted all those in the past 4,000 years. None of those things have worked on them. I seriously doubt that any kind of test is going to work on them. They'll quickly take it over. They'll bribe, blackmail, or eliminate whoever's in charge of those tests, and the test will be reversed, and soon it'll be anybody that has a conscience should be executed. So what to do with society, how to change it around? We're always talking about, and especially in the truth movement and in the activist movement, and everybody's always talking about waking people up, and I got to be really sick of that. Well, okay, let's wake everybody up, and then what happens? But unfortunately, I'm back to the waking people up approach. I don't think we can sort of find any search and destroy method of getting rid of psychopaths. But the psychopaths derive their power from the complicity of the general population. It's only because most people still get suckered in by the manipulation, and most people still admire them. So if somehow, and I'm hoping the video and the book, and there's also a booklet you can download, and people spreading the word about what psychopaths are, if the better informed they are, the better able they are to spot them, and then start to socially distance them. It's the same sort of strategy that you would use if there was a pandemic. You have to socially distance yourself from the infection and infected people. And I think society as a whole, if we can socially distance ourselves from the psychopaths, and we don't need a test, we don't need anybody to tell us. If you recognize the patterns and the symptoms, even whether your diagnosis is wrong or not, your behavior is not going to harm them simply by cutting them off of food, meaning your money, your attention, your devotion. So you're not You're not hurting them by cutting them off. You're depriving them of what they want. You're depriving a junkie of heroin, but you can't say by removing heroin from a junkie, you're actually doing violence against the junkie. So the same thing with society. If we can sort of isolate these people and then remove their access to the power, then we can cut them off. And we're not doing violence to them, yet they won't be able to have the power and control to create so much destruction and evil. And there's no other word for it. It's evil, what's going on in the world. So I'm back down to waking people up. Yeah.
For more on this story and other breaking news and current events, please go to globalresearch.ca. For more research and analysis by James Corbett, please go to corbettreport.com.